Every collapse in history follows the same recipe, whether it's a political collapse, an economic collapse, or a social collapse. And you have to know how to see the warning signs. As a CIA officer, I watched countries collapse from South America all the way across the globe into Southeast Asia. And when that happens, there are people who get crushed and left behind, while others are quietly prepared to win. I want to give you 3 tools that you can use to prepare and win in the face of any possible collapse that could be coming, and to make sure you are not one of the millions that are left behind. The first tool I want to give you is something that CIA taught me called the Seneca effect, or the Seneca cliff. It's this mathematical model that shows that success and growth happens slowly, but collapse and decline happens very quickly, very much like climbing up the side of a mountain to a cliff and jumping off the other side. When you think about the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Soviet Union, these are classic examples of a Seneca cliff, something that took centuries to build and a matter of just a few years to utterly and completely collapse. In all 3 of those cases, the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Soviet Union, you see very similar trends that you're seeing right now in the United States and across Western countries. One of the primary factors contributing to the current Seneca effect is global debt buildup. Right now, as a globe, we are about $315 trillion in debt as of 2024, and that number continues to increase. Now, shockingly, only 4 countries in the world contribute to 75% of that overall debt. And those 4 top contributing countries are the United States, China, Japan, and France. These 4 countries are shouldering 75% of the $315 trillion that our planet has indebted to itself. As that debt continues to increase, we start to see it expedite the speed to which we are facing a possible collapse. Consider just the United States and China, the top 2 countries in the world carrying the most debt. Those 2 countries are carrying the most debt in large part because of their own conflict with each other. The United States' trade war with China and China's buildup of military strength are both being heavily subsidized by debt borrowing from both countries. So essentially, the United States is taking debt to prepare for a future war against China, and China is taking debt to prepare for a future war against the United States. That means that both of these top 2 contributing countries will continue to take on more debt as the years roll forward, increasing the total global debt. And then when you look at the 4th country on the list, France, you can actually see a perfect example of what collapse looks like in its early stages. France has had 5 different prime ministers in the last 2 years. They actually dissolved their entire government by dissolving parliament within the last 2 years also. So here you have one of the wealthiest countries in Europe that has gone face to face with full-on political collapse when it voted no confidence in its government, dissolved its parliament, and then changed its prime minister 5 times. That's why you saw riots in the streets of Paris and cars on fire on beautiful summer afternoons in 2025. History has shown us that debt crises grow slowly, but then when they reach the tipping point, they destroy societies quickly. A second key factor that we are seeing contribute to the current Seneca effect is something known as an asset bubble. Now, assets come in many shapes and sizes, from stocks and bonds to real estate and even businesses. But what we're seeing across the West is that asset bubbles have been propped up, even though they came about naturally at the end of the COVID-19 pandemic as government incentives and financial economic stimulus was put into the marketplace. It increased the valuation of tech companies, of property, and now we are seeing governments maintain this artificial valuation of currency and inflation rates in order to keep those valuations high. 5 years ago, we saw overconfident investors put too much money into the tech sector, the same tech sector that for the last 2 years has been purging jobs by the thousands. High interest rates, which governments use to try to incentivize or encourage local populations to buy government bonds, have instead been purchased by foreigners using foreign currency. So what that means is foreign currency has flooded into domestic markets, which has caused absolute currency chaos. As a result, governments don't have high reserves of their own currency. They have high reserves of foreign currency, which makes it very difficult for them to manage their own currency values. Now, governments are forcibly lowering interest rates, even though they don't have economic data to demonstrate that those lower interest rates are healthy. The reason governments want to lower interest rates is because they know that lower interest rates will incentivize people to take more debt, which will help stimulate the existing economy. But the problem is we already have too much debt. That's the very same Seneca effect that was our primary issue. So more debt in the face of an existing debt crisis is not going to help us resolve our problems. It's going to drive us closer to the edge of that cliff into collapse. The third factor contributing to the current Seneca effect has to do with peace and stability around the globe. If you haven't discovered your natural-born spy skills, then somebody else may be using theirs against you. CIA teaches us there are only three types of people: those who manipulate, those who motivate, and those who are being controlled by one of the other two. I built a 3-minute CIA-style quiz designed to help you unlock your secret psychological advantage and identify your biggest blind spot. This quiz will help you weaponize your natural gift and use it to get ahead of 99% of people in power, money, and purpose. Click on the first link in the description below or scan the QR code on your screen right now to take the test. I want you to discover your hidden spy skill and use it before someone else uses theirs against you. The world that we live in right now is more dangerous and volatile than it's been in the last 40 years. We have hot wars in 2 different continents. We have trade wars between the world's largest economies. We have offensive and defensive cyber operations that are targeting everything from public utilities to publicly traded companies. In addition to the conflict that we have worldwide, we're seeing public trust in government and government institutions at an all-time low, not just in the United States, but in multiple countries around the world. As the trust in government institutions start to decline, people's participation in those government institutions also starts to decline, which means people put less trust and less faith into government bonds, government treasuries, government assets, which only further exacerbates the risk of a pending financial collapse. So when we need to be considering peace and stability, what we have is conflict and instability. And when these two elements collide, they destroy the fundamental economic system of the society that we were built on. Our economic systems, our social systems, our political systems only work until they don't work anymore. And it's much faster to destroy the institution than it ever was to build it in the first place. These 3 factors really help us to understand the Seneca effect that we are trapped in right now. But there are 2 other tools that also help us identify if and when the pending collapse is likely to strike. The second tool I want to give you is something called following market movers. Market movers are those people that have so much money they can literally move an entire market with their behaviors or with their ideas. One of the largest market movers in history is Berkshire Hathaway, led by investor Warren Buffett. Right now, Warren Buffett is holding in excess of $350 billion in cash reserves. Now, technically, he's not holding it in actual piles of cash. He's holding it in government bonds that are guaranteed for payment at a very low interest rate. But what that tells us is that rather than have faith in the U.S. stock market, rather than have faith in the U.S. housing market, rather than have faith in the U.S. commercial real estate market, the one thing that Warren Buffett wants to do is hold on to his cash, as a physical asset that he can use later on as he sees fit. When a market mover like Warren Buffett holds on to cash rather than use it to move the market, that's how you know that his faith in the market is low. That is a major sign of a pending collapse. The third tool I want to give you is something called economic health indicators. Economic health indicators are best left to economic specialists like Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates. Ray Dalio has compared the U.S. economy to the heart of an unhealthy person, basically comparing our increasing debt to the increasing plaque that can happen inside someone's heart or arteries. As that plaque starts to build up, it actually decreases the effectiveness of the body, of the heart, of the arteries themselves. As that deficiency sets in, it starts to reduce the amount of blood flow, which is critical to the success of the body overall. In the same way, the 3 elements of our Seneca effect are creating a type of death spiral, a type of imminent heart attack for our economy. And that's what Dalio has been trying to warn us about. Ray Dalio's estimate is that unless we can rein in national debt to within 3% of GDP, we are basically on the precipice of economic failure. As of the end of 2025, our economic debt ratio in the United States was 25 times higher than our GDP. So according to Ray Dalio's comparison, unless we can reduce our debt ratio, reduce our Seneca effect by 22%, from 25% down to 3%, we are in store for imminent economic and social collapse. What does this mean for you and me? What can we do to try to prepare ourselves for the worst if the worst happens, or for the long, slow continuation of our current crisis? Well, the number one way to overcome the Seneca effect is through change. Changing behaviors, changing habits, changing mindset. So the question becomes, what can you do right now to make a change? What can you do to change the way you save your money? Have you always kept your money in a savings account? Well, maybe now it's time to invest it in some other asset. Have you been somebody who's always put off getting fit? Well, maybe now it's time to make a change and start going to the gym to reduce your stress levels and increase your sleep efficiency. Are you one of the people who has always put work before family? Well, maybe it's time to make a change to start putting a little more family time into your day so that you can be there to support them emotionally when the worst happens. While impacting the larger global economic environment is beyond the everyday person's ability to control, what we do get to control is the men and women that we vote into office to decide on our economic policies. So if you haven't been participating in the voting process, maybe it's time to make a change and start participating in that process. If you've always been somebody who votes along party lines, maybe it's time to make a change and start voting for somebody who follows your principles and values rather than whatever color tie they wear around their neck. If you want to outsmart Seneca, all you have to do is make a change. And the path that our government has been on for the last 2 decades is not a path that changes quickly or possibly at all. I want you to serve yourself and prepare to protect all that you've built. So I've given you these 3 tools to be able to identify and keep an eye on the pending possible economic, political, or social collapse facing us in the West. Keep an eye on the Seneca effect. Look out for that Seneca cliff. Always keep an eye on what market movers are doing. And if market movers are moving, you should move in the same direction. And third and lastly, keep an eye on your economic health indicators. If you don't know what economic health indicators are, that's fine. Find those people who do understand those economic health indicators and listen to what they have to say. People like Ray Dalio, people like Warren Buffett, people like me here at Everyday Spy. I want to see you succeed because I am part of this country. I am part of this world. I am part of this international economy right there along with you. I'll see you on the other side.